I cited him once at Sylvester Park where he pointed out that on the corner of Capitol Way, and I think it's Legion, there's a plaque that says that that was the last spot that Lewis and Clark completed their expedition to the west. And it's really there, so he can't all be right, always be right. Anyway, we had the honor, several of us, to meet him at the Thurston County Historical Society Day, which was a very interesting event. And I, as a lover of history, was very impressed with the stories he had to tell. So please welcome Ira Kitmacher.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for that introduction. First, let me apologize for my voice. It's kind of raspy tonight. I did a 2-hour presentation last night at the McMiniman Spanish Ballroom in Tacoma on haunted future sounds. So I kind of took my voice away. But as you just mentioned, I research, write about, and do speaking engagements about haunted topics, folkloric topics, mixing it in with the history of the Pacific Northwest. And so let me start with a bad joke, so I'll get into bad jokes, which is on point for my topic, which is, where do ghostly sailors like to go sailing? Ghostly sailors, the Dead Sea. That's where they like to go sailing. So with that, my story is from the graveyard of the Pacific, which is the Pacific coast, from Tillamook in Oregon all the way up the Washington coast to Vancouver Island in Canada. In fact, my first book was titled Haunted Graveyard of the Pacific. There have been over 2,000 shipwrecks along that stretch with countless lost lives. So it is said to be a supernaturally charged area, meaning that there are hundreds of ghost stories all throughout the region. So this is one of those ghost stories. So it's 1693, and a Spanish galleon is sailing. The name of the ship is the Santo Cristo de Burgos. It's sailing from Manila in the Philippines to Acapulco in Mexico. It was its regular route, summer 1693, and on board it had fine china and cottons and other fabrics, and it also had, it turned out, wax. Beeswax. Why, you may ask, beeswax? It's because in the New World, Catholic churches used the beeswax for candles and ceremonies, so they were transporting it to the New World. Unfortunately, the ship was hit by a bad storm in that summer of 1693. It was blown off course. It didn't make it to Mexico. It made it to the Oregon coast, to just south of Cannon Beach, if you know where that is. At the base of a mountain that still exists called Neahkahnie Mountain. And we know this because the local native tribe, the Chinook, have told the story through their oral history. So this is the story. The natives are watching as the ship wrecks on the rocks at the base of Neahkahnie Mountain, and off of the ship gets a man wearing a great plumed hat. We might think of him as Johnny Depp from Pirates of the Caribbean, but it's clear this man is in charge. He's the captain of the ship, and he has 30 of his crew with him. They're carrying a chest out of the ship up on the Neahkahnie Mountain. Today we would assume maybe it was a treasure chest. We don't know that for sure, but they carried this chest up on the Neahkahnie Mountain. They dug a hole, they put the chest in the hole, and then the captain did something very unexpected. He shot and killed at least one and maybe several of his own crew and threw their bodies into the hole. Why, you might ask, and I would say it's probably because he knew that the local natives were scared to death of the dead, and that the dead, they believed when someone died, an evil spirit could be released. And so the captain must have known if he put dead bodies in with the treasure chest, the natives would never mess with the chest, and they never did. So we know that the captain and his crew then left the site, got into a smaller boat and sailed south and were never seen again. But ever since then, there have been stories on the Pacific coast, especially in and around Cannon Beach, Astoria, Oregon, Long Beach Peninsula in Washington, of ghostly pirates. These stories have been around for centuries. Another interesting fact related to all this is these natives were so scared to death of the dead that when people died in their villages, they would take the bodies as far from the villages as possible and put them on the islands in the Columbia River. Some of those islands are called the Memaloose Islands near the Dalles in the Columbia River Gorge. And we know this because Lewis and Clark came sailing down in 1805 with their port discovery, and they saw dead native bodies in the trees and in canoes because they didn't bury them in the ground. So that's how scared the natives were of the dead. The story continues. That was 1693. 1700, the last big tsunami that hit. It was a 9.0 earthquake, and a tsunami shoved this ship further up onto the land. Out of the ship tumbled this beeswax with strange symbols, which some people thought, well, that must be the spirits protecting the treasure. I think it's more likely that they were just the stamps from the ship with the ship's lettering So the story continues. It's legal in Oregon to dig on public lands up until 1999. People were digging for centuries looking for this buried treasure. Neahkani Mountain has a nickname, which is the Mountain of 1,000 Holes. People were looking. It's never been found, and it has been illegal to dig on public lands in Oregon since 1999. But there have been movies made. I don't know if you've ever heard of movies by the name of The Fog, which is about ghostly pirates who haunt the California and Oregon coast. And then in the early 80s, a movie director named Steven Spielberg heard this story about this ship and said, wow, this would make a great movie. And he created The Goonies, a 1985 movie based on the story that I just told about these ghostly pirates and buried treasure, and the stories have persisted. So that is my story. I don't know if I kept within 8 minutes or if
Yeah.
Or something else. But he spent his childhood in Juneau, Alaska. And you may meet when he tells some unforgettable characters from 1952, which may include Little Johnny, Buster, Lugnut, Blister, Spit, Hambone, Dumpy, Gully, and if that doesn't sound like the Seven Dwarfs, I don't know what. But they're from Juneau, so they never got the names quite right. Anyway, it's always very interesting where Johnny takes us. And let's welcome him tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. 1952, little Johnny was 6 years old, and what a year he had. First thing happened, his dad was a butcher, cut half his finger, his own finger off. And then little Johnny graduated. And then he went outside for the first time in his life. Where he's been all this time, we don't know. We'll hope to find out. And then the man who gave him his name, Johnny, had a little misfortune. And then the biggest ship he ever saw in his life sank right in front of him. Well, most kids that age are collecting marbles and rocks, but little Johnny collected tragedies. Now, I could tell the story, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna let Johnny tell it, little Johnny. Well, it all started, I think it was New Year's. My mom and dad gave a party, a big party. Blister, my sister, and I couldn't go because we were too short. But there was a lot of beer and a lot of whiskey and a lot of yelling and a lot of bad words because we wrote them all down. We listened all night, and then the next day my dad had to go to work at Case Lot Groceries where he was a butcher. Now, he was making hamburger, grinding it up, and he put his finger where it shouldn't have gone. And when he brought it back up, it was missing. Now my mother made a nice little sock for him, but it was just half a sock because he only had half a finger. My dad, every time we had hamburgers for dinner, he'd say, "Keep an eye out for my finger, would you?" I always did. Now, my brother and sister, they never looked at their hamburgers, they just ate them, but I looked. And then, when other people would bring their little kids over, smaller than me, my dad would go over and say, "Oh, look, I left half my finger up my nose," and all the little kids would come running over. I didn't, I knew where that finger was. It was in the hamburger. Well, come May, I graduated. Now, my mom said I was the third in the family to graduate. That means that Blister, my sister, graduated. Ludnut, my brother, graduated. My mom and dad weren't our family. They're my mom and dad. So, I was a little excited about first grade going in because it didn't have naps. Now, I don't know how you go to school without a nap, but that's the only thing I got an E in. You know, they gave you these report cards that had 3 letters and big words behind them. And I had to ask Blister what they meant. E meant excellent. I got 1. S means satisfied. That meant the teacher was satisfied with what you did. And then there was 1 U. I had lots of U's. That's unbelievable. When I gave my report card to my mother, she goes, "I don't believe it. This is unbelievable." And I said, "You're right, Mom, it is, isn't it? That's what the U stands for." No, John, that stands for unsatisfactory, and we're not having this in first grade. Well, I had 3 months to figure out what I was going to do in first grade. Later on, about a couple weeks, I was upstairs packing my bag. It was a little blue bag that said Pan Am on it. When the door, someone knocked on our back door. "Mom, could you get that? I'm packing my bag like you asked me to." Then I heard my mom talking, and she said, "Johnny, some of the gang's down here wants to say goodbye to you." "Okay." And I went down, and there was part of the gang. There was Bingo, there was Buzzy, and there was Bones. And Bingo goes, "Hey, could you get me a snake? I've never seen a snake except at the 20th Century Theater." "Sure, I can do that." And Buzzy said, "Could you get me a bee? I hear the bees are as big as ravens." "Really?" "Yeah, I'll get you a bee." "You want anything, Bones?" "No." "Okay, well, goodbye, guys. I got to pack my bag, and I'm going." So I ran upstairs and put my swimming suit in my bag, closed it up, and went back downstairs. My mom said, "Are you packed and ready to go?" I said, "Yeah, huh? Do you have underwear?" "Oh, no, Mom, I have my swimming suit." "Do you have socks?" "You don't wear socks with the swimming. Do you have a t-shirt?" Blister said, "It's too hot to wear t-shirts. Leave your bag there to go sit in the corner and I'll pack." Well, a little later, my dad drove up in a delivery truck from K-Spot Groceries where he worked. We got in the back with the luggage, and my mom got in the front. We went to the airport. I've never seen the airport, except from outside. We went inside, and it had huge windows where you looked at all these different planes. Well, my brother stood there with his hands in his pocket like this, so I went over and stood with my hands in my pocket like this, and Blister went over to the big window, and she was looking outside, and I said, "Ludnut, what are you looking at?" "I'm just looking." "Well, what at? Something?" "What something? If you tell me, I can look too." "Why don't you go over and talk to your sister?" But just then, she started jumping up and down like all the dumb girls do, yelling, "There it comes, there it comes." I went over there and said, "Where is it?" She said, "Right over there." Oh, boy. We both started jumping up like dumb little kids. I bet everybody thought we were cute, though. And this come in. It was huge. It had 4 big motors. It was all silver. And it landed. And blue smoke came up. And it went past our building. And then it drove back on the road and turned right in front of where we were standing. These 2 real heavy fat men that my mom's called said they had plumber's crack in their pants, because when they bent over there was a long kind of a spot there was missing. And they pushed these stairs out to the plane and pushed it against it. Then the plane opened up, and this lady with this funny hat, really I wouldn't wear it, it was really dumb, and a kind of a blue and gray uniform on. I like blue, so it was a blue uniform. came out, and then all the people came in. And then when they walked by Dad, they said, "You going outside, Bert?" That was the name of my dad. He said, "No, Eileen's taking the kids down to see her mother." Pretty soon somebody went, "Hey, Bert, you going outside?" "No, no." This went on 5, 6 times. Finally, I went over to Ludna. I said, "Ludna, they keep asking Dad if he's going outside. We have to go outside to get on the plane." "That's not what that means, John." "What does it mean?" "It means we're going to the lower 48, the United States, America, where all the big towns are. Do you understand? Are we a state? No, we're a territory." "Well, how do we become a state?" "Go talk to your sister. She's doing nothing." So I went over and said, "Blister, you know we're going outside?" "Well, of course I know we're going outside. How do you think we're going to Portland?" Everybody knew things except me. Well, then the guy comes on the radio and says, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're preparing to load the plane. Will you please extinguish all cigarettes and hand the agent at the door your ticket?" Out we walked with my mother. She had my hand and she had Blister's hand. We're walking along, and I said, "I'd like to sit by the window, Mom." Blister, of course, tried to ruin it and said, "He always gets what he wants. It's my turn." My mom stopped, raised her hands and said, "No more arguing. Any arguing, you're going back inside. Johnny sits by the window till we get to Ned Island. Carly, you sit till we get to Portland. Got that clear?" So off we went. We climbed there, and the lady with the funny hat showed us where to sit, and they were beautiful, big, huge chairs. They were blue and gray, but let's just say they're blue because I like blue. And I sat by the window and I looked out, then the plane loaded up, and then the door closed, and then the plane started to shake, and the motor started going around. Holy cow. Then another motor went around. Then another motor went around. And then another motor. All these motors are going, and the wings were going like they were waving at somebody. We're just sitting there. And then another voice came on. "Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This Daddy will command the flight today. Susan is leading the front cabin. My name is Karen, and I'll be head back here. Now, if you have any questions, please get in contact us. I'd like to point out the safety features, so please put your attention to Sybil up in front," or whatever her name was. Well, I knew what safety was. It was for grown-ups, not for little kids. So I kept watching those motors and listening to them. And finally, we got underway, and we rode, and we drove down the road. And then we stopped, we turned around, and then we drove down another road. And I don't think this pilot knew where he was going because we stopped again. And then the motors really went fast, and we're going, and we're going, and we're bumping, and we're bumping. Mom's bumping, Blister's bumping, everybody's bumping, and all of a sudden it was smooth. Real smooth. My mom taps me on the shoulder, points out the window. I look out the window. "Mom, Sid just let the cows out of their house. They're eating. They're having lunch." "Holy cow, we're fine, Mom." We kept going. We went up past Lemon Creek Glacier. We kept going up. Mount Juno. I could see our house. I waved. I don't know if they saw me, but I waved. We kept going up. We were higher than the snow. We were higher than the mountains. We were higher than the world. And then I saw all these clouds, and I was worried we might hit them. And we did. Have you ever taken your pillowcase and put it over your head? It's light, but you can't see anything. And that's what it's like in the clouds. I just stood there. It was real quiet in the plane. And then it came out of bright sunshine. And the clouds looked like cotton balls my mother puts in my ears when they hurt. I could walk on them, but I thought I better not because another plane might come up. All of a sudden, this cabin filled up with blue smoke. Everybody was smoking. So I asked my mom if we could open the window, and she said no. So I didn't. We kept going. Then we came into getting ready to land in Annette Island. And the captain came on and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please put your seats forward, extinguish all smoking." And we just got word there'll be some turbulence in the area. I said, "Mom, what's turbulence?" She said, "That's rough weather." I've only been on a merry-go-round, so I was kind of excited about rough weather. And we came in, and that plane all of a sudden dropped. And then it went back up. And then it was like this, and then like this. And I looked at my mom, and she was all white. I looked at Blister, and her whole face was sucked into her mouth, except her nose. She was scared. Not me. I was excited. And then we hit, and we hit again, and we hit again. And finally we started going. And then the captain came on again. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we just bounced into Annette Island. I hope you enjoyed that trip. If you're staying here, you can catch your flight to Ketchikan. And if you're going to Seattle and Portland, you may get off. We'll be here 37 minutes. Take your boarding pass with you." Well, we got off, and then we talked, and then we got on, and then the rest of the trip was very boring because Blister took my seat at the window, and I never got to see anything except Casper the Friendly Ghost comic book I was reading. Now, we landed in Portland, and I didn't know who my grandma was. You know, it seems like everybody over a certain age is grandma. But Mom said it was her mom, so I knew she had to be old because my mom was old. And I knew she was grandma. Mother said she had a Finnish tongue. I didn't want to see it. So we got off, and there was a little gray-haired old lady standing there. She hugged my mother, and they both talked in a Finnish tongue. I don't know what they were talking about, probably me. And then they introduced us, and then we went and got her in a car, and we went to this place called Skidmore Avenue, where my grandma's house was. And we went in the house, and after we put everything away, my grandma says, "I want to show you kids something. Have you ever seen or heard of a television?" And we said, "No. What's a television?" So we go down there, there's a square about this big. She turned it on, and it looked like it was snowing. Well, this wasn't very exciting. She said, "Just a minute." And she called them rabbit ears, and she moved them around. And pretty soon a picture appeared. There was some grown-ups talking. She said, "What do you think? You like that? Can we go outside and play?" So we went outside and played. Now, my mother and my grandmother sat there and watched that thing all the time we were in Portland. They'd have a little tiny cup of coffee, and my grandmother would take a square of sugar. She took it right here and drank her coffee and put it down. And when she was all done with the coffee, she'd take that out and put it there. I was amazed. I would sit there and watch that. Why didn't she eat that sugar? What was wrong with her? I needed some sugar. But they wouldn't let me have any. So after a couple of days, I decided I gotta spread my wings. So I went outside, and I told them I'd be back in a couple hours. And I walked to the next door neighbors, and that was far enough for me. I turned around and started coming back when I saw it. It was green with a yellow stripe down its back. I was excited. I ran home to Grandma's, ran down to her basement, got a jar with a lid on it, ran back out there, got down on my hands and knees when a car honked. "Son, this is no place to play. Let me get the snake in the jar and then I'll leave." I got the snake in, put the lid on, ran back, put it on the back porch, and went looking for Blister. Well, Blister was reading a stupid book, but I got her to come out, and I said, "Blister, look at this." "On, that's really dumb." "Why?" "It's a snake. Bingo wanted a snake. It's dead. It's been run over." "Bingo doesn't know that. All he knows is it's a snake." "Oh, you are impossible." Well, a couple days later, Blister yells at me again. "Blister, Johnny, come here. there's bees outside. Well, I went out there and they were big bees, yellow and black, and they were about that big. I said, what do? Well, we go down and we get a glass jar and a lid, and I'll put some holes in it. So she got a nail and a hammer, put some holes in it. I said, what are the holes for? We don't want it to end up like your snake. So we went over there. How do we get it? Do we have to get it into the jar? Just watch me. So she put it up under the bee, slapped the top on, screwed it down, and that bee hit the side of that jar as fast as it could, all the way around. It was mad. She said, here. So I took it and I sat down on the porch with it. And I tried talking to it and telling it what was going to happen. It was going to have an exciting trip to Juneau, Alaska, and it wasn't going to have to fly. It was going to be flown. So it finally settled down. It was so fluffy, that thing. So I unscrewed it. And I put it in my finger just to pet it a little bit. It didn't recognize me because it bit me. And that pain started here and ran all the way till it hit the most important part of my body. My dad said my brain. And it really hurt. I started crying and ran inside, and Grandma was there, and she said, what did you do? And I told her, and she said, oh, boy, come on. She takes me by the hand, puts me on a chair in front of the sink and turns on the cold water. Just then my mom walks in, and my grandmother said to her, is that really your son? Well, I hope my mom said yes, because I thought I was. They started talking Finnish then and laughing, so I guess I was. And she got my finger all better, and she said, you know, in Finland, when little boys cry, they get a cup of coffee. I said, could I have a cup of coffee with a sugar cube? And the young, yeah, you can do that. So I got that sugar cube, I put it in my mouth. I took that cup of coffee and sprayed it all over my grandmother and yelled, hot, hot, and sprayed my cube out. But I picked it up and dusted it off, put it in, and ran upstairs. And my mother came up and said, is everything okay, honey? I said, I want to go back inside. We are inside. I want to go back to Juneau. It never rains here. There's no kids that are alive. I want to go back where kids are kids, and we live on Star Hill. Well, we're going back tomorrow. Well, we went back. I had a snake. I had a finger that had a hole in it. And I promise you one thing, I'll never go outside again. Well, it's about, maybe 2 weeks later, there was a knock at the back door. We were having lunch. So I got up and went and answered the door. And there was a real scruffy looking guy. I knew who it was. He had a wool shirt on, wool pants, suspenders, helmet, boots or shoes, a white velvet hat. And he kind of talked in a funny tone too, and came inside, and him and my mom started that Finnish talk again. And finally she said, come here for you, Wayne, and wants to know if you'd like to go fishing with him. Well, my brother said yes. Now, my uncle was 82 years old. They say in the paper he was the oldest fisherman in Alaska at that time. He had a trawler called the Oulu. And Oulu is a town in Finland in the northern, close to the Arctic Circle. He wasn't from there, but that was where he went fishing out of. When he was 17 years old or 16, the Russian came and drafted him because Russia had Finland in those days. Well, he ran away, jumped on a boat and came to America. In 1890-something, he came to Alaska and became a bear hunter, a famous bear hunter. And then he got a trawler and started trolling. So they left, and we're going to be gone 10 days. And in about 2 weeks, school is going to start now. So we were having lunch again one day when the phone rang, and my mom picks it up and answers, and she starts sniffing. She hung up, said, kids, you gotta put your shoes on, we gotta go down to the city boat harbor. We didn't know why, so we got everything on and grabbed her hand, and we walked downtown to the city float. There was my dad standing with my lieutenant Leadna was like this, very sad. My dad had his arm around him, they were talking. We got there, he said, Eileen, this is Art. He has the fish packer, Josephine, he's head of it. He'd like to tell you what happened. He said, Eileen, I got some sad news. They come out of Tennessee Inlet. They come around the corner there, and I could see a boat. It was up on the rocks. I kept looking, and I see a little boy waving his hands on the beach. Well, we stopped, and I took a boat in, a small skiff, and we sat down, we talked with him. His uncle took the skiff from the trawler and was going to see how he'd get the boat off the rocks when it tipped over. He tried to climb back up on the skiff, but he slid back off, and then he just passed on. Well, Wayne swam out and got him, 12 years old. He got him to shore, but he couldn't lift him. His clothes, everything was wet. But he pulled him up as the tide came in. And Art said that was really smart. And when he got him up at high tide, he went up to the woods and he got some branches and started covering him, because the eagles and the ravens were attacking his body, especially his eyes. We don't know how many days he was there. We think it was 1.5 days, which was a miracle in a way, because no bears showed up. And there was a big bear creek just down the ways, a big salmon creek. Well, we got all done and we went home. My brother never talked about it until 2 years ago. And he told me he was going to write a story. Well, he hasn't written it yet, but I'm hoping he will. Then there was one last time that Princess Kathleen left Juneau, Alaska. It was full of tourists, 454 passengers and crew. It was on its way to Skagway, Alaska. It went around Douglas, Upland Canal, and went by an island called Shelter Island. Now there's a light on there, and as they got to the light, the chief engineer said starboard, not starboard 0.12 or any degrees, he just said starboard. A little while later, the quartermaster said, sir, we're still on the starboard heading. Chief mate belittled the quartermaster. There's two things you never want to hear on a boat, fire or land. And they heard, land ahead. Well, the chief made the second mistake. Hard starboard. At 2 a.m., September 7th, 1952, the Princess Kathleen went up to the rocks on Lena Point. All 454 passengers and crew got off safely. Now, at my house, at 4:30 in the morning, my dad woke me up and said, if you're going with me, you better be up, dressed, and in the truck in 5 minutes. Well, I'd do anything to go with my dad, so I was up, dressed, and in the truck in 5 minutes. There was my dad, Blister, and I sat between them. My dad drove. Then there was Ludnuck on the other side because he wanted a window to himself. And we drove out this old muddy road. And we got way out there. We turned off to another muddy road. And there was blankets, and there was little fires, and there was junk all over the road. We got out of our car, and we walked down to the beach. And there was the biggest ship I had ever seen in my life. It was trying to go in the woods. We kept walking towards it. All of a sudden, there was a screeching sound. Like every girl in the school ran up to the blackboard and took their fingernails down. Ludna, what is that? That's the metal on the rocks. She's going back under the sea. We sat and watched that. Princess Kathleen sank that day. My dad grabbed my hand, my sister's hand. We started walking back to our car, and he said, you've seen a piece of history being made. Well, 1952 was a pretty exciting year for me. And thank you all for taking that journey with me. And the next journey will be in 1957, when I meet my girlfriend at 11 years old, who is still with me today. Thank you.
Okay, so we are back, and I have turned all these people who said maybe they're gonna tell into they're going to tell. But I think I'll clog the airways and I'll start. That's all right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is a story I told at a tree hugging event. And that was the first time I'd ever told it, so this is the second. Lord of the woods, king and tree of the sky, the mighty oak. There are over 500 different species of oaks. They can be found in so many places. Why, you can find them here in Olympia. And you can certainly find them where I used to live, on Russian Hill in San Francisco. Now, among those over 500 different species of oak, the Quer agrifolius is the coastal oak. Now, its leaves are very, very dark green, so dark green that they are efficient in solar absorption. And they're slightly curled, unlike the leaves here in Olympia, which oak leaves are very flat. These are slightly cut to catch the fog and the dew, because you don't get as much rain there. Now, before the Spanish came to California, there were oaks everywhere. And the coastal oaks of the Bay Area were a central part of the Ohlone people's food source. Every year, about this time of year, they'd have big acorn gatherings, which would go on for weeks. And they would sit along streams and they would smash the yolk of the acorns and they grind them and they wash them and they wash them and they wash them, because acorns are full of tannic acid and that had to be removed, but it could be reused as tattoo ink. Then that ground acorn flour became the main staple of their diet. Well, there weren't many left. They had pretty much disappeared, and Oakland, California got their name, but not the trees. But my tree, my oak, lived in splendid isolation on Russian Hill. It had been there a very long time. It was over 100 feet tall. It was so wide that it took 3 people stretching their arms as far as they could to go around its diameter. My oak tree had been there for so long that sidewalks and streets and houses and apartment buildings had crept around it. Now, I didn't live in an apartment. I lived in what was called an earthquake cottage. It was built after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake out of materials that recycled after the quake and after the subsequent fires. So it was a little bit of everything. It had no foundation. There were 4 nail kegs into which posts had been put and concrete surrounded them. And those supported a wooden framework over which were 3-inch thick redwood planks. Now, that was pretty much it. And over the years, with no permits, other things had been slapped on, including a little bathroom, which was about 5 feet by 5 feet, and had a shower so small you had to hold your arms against your body to turn around effectively. Many, many critters made that oak tree home. Well, first, below those planks of redwood and the ground, there was a gap about this big. And in that gap lived a skunk. Now that skunk and I had reached a détente. And we would pass each other in the crepuscular hours, both pretending we didn't see each other as we shuffled past. We were never aggressive. It was never an issue. 30 feet up on that oak tree, there was a clay nest, and that was the nest of a stellar blue jay. Stellar blue jays are very intelligent, but very raucous. They can imitate many sounds. They could make the sound of a dog barking. They could make the whine of a cat. They could even imitate mechanical things. And boy, did they send up a cacophony of protest when the birds came. Now, some people called them the wild parrots of Telegraph Hill, but they were Connors. They were originally from Peru and Ecuador, and they'd been imported to San Francisco, but they were so obnoxious, screaming and carrying on all the time, getting into trouble, that people released them, and they went wild, and they'd come to my oak tree, and they would pick the acorns and throw them everywhere because they couldn't actually eat them, and the blue jay would go crazy. Off, off, off! Get away! It was amazing. There were lots of insects. There were visitors like raccoons, squirrels, oh, you name it. Everything seemed to go on around that tree. The oak tree is a symbol of wisdom, of strength, of protection. And I felt that I was blessed to be under that tree's support. I didn't even tell you about the time it attacked the plumber, but that's a different story. So, we're moving to the people who said maybe, but now they're locked in. So, the first maybe is Toby. Toby and I were participants in the tree hugging festival last weekend, and she is going to tell us a story. I don't even know what it's about.
Before I start my story, I'd like to just make this announcement for the feature teller who will be presenting in December. I'm doing this now because November, we will not be having a regular meeting like this because of calibration. So in December 10th, Wednesday, 6 to 8, Anne Shimojima, who is a national storyteller based out of Chicago, she will be doing a presentation called Hidden Memories, which is the story of her family and the Japanese American incarceration during World War II. And she has done much research and has gone through archives and photographs. And so she has a PowerPoint to go along with, to share with others what had happened to her family during that time. So it should be a very good, very, very good program because she has done it all through the United States. And that will be in our newsletter, so don't worry about that. As Sandra said, yes, we were in the tree hugging festival, and it was really quite interesting, wasn't it? There was an hour of yoga, and then a storytellers came on, and then there were dancers who danced to the singing of trees, and then a communal tree hug. So my story has to do with trees also. My grandma was very excited because when we went to visit her in Seattle, she had a basket of matsutake, pine mushrooms. And we grandkids came up to her and she goes, "Oh, kids, I got these matsutake up in the mountains at a very secret place. I cannot tell you." And we all smelled this smell of the temperate rainforest. And she would take one of the matsutake and cut it very thin and saute it with soy sauce and a little bit of sugar. And when I would put that piece in my mouth, oh, that salty with the sugar taste, it just coated my tongue like a forest grew on every single taste bud. And the forest was of the red pine tree where the matsutake loved to live. And Grandma would say, "Well, I know you always love to hear my stories. And since we're talking about matsutake pine, I'm going to tell you the story of the old man and the pine tree, a story that takes place in Japan." And she would always start her stories out with Mikashi Mikashi. Long ago in Japan, there was a village. And just outside of the village, beautiful grove of red pine trees. In the little village lived an old man, Oji-san, and his wife, an old woman, Oban-san. Every morning, Oji-san would go out to that forest and he would pick the dead branches that were on the ground. Because he would look up and smell that fresh pine scent and knew that trees were very important to all of us. And when the wind would blow, some of those branches would touch each other as they were conversing, talking to each other. Okay, but what is that? Oh, it was a crunching noise of leaves, and his neighbor Saburo was coming over. Oji-san, Oji-san, what are you doing picking those dead branches? Why, there's a perfectly good one here. Here, if you take this, why, you would get a lot of money in the village. No, he goes on. You cannot do that. Taking a limb off of a tree, it's just like if someone were to rip your arm off. It would hurt them. Son, ridiculous. No wonder you are so poor. You're too kind-hearted, ne? And off he went laughing. Oji-san continued to pick the branches when he thought he heard this sound. Tatsukete! Tatsukete! Which means help. Tatsukete! Itai desho! I'm in pain. Oh goodness, how would it be coming from? He walked closer to the sound when Tatsukete! He looked up. It was the red pine tree, and from it a broken limb that was dripping that sticky resin. Oh, he died, desho. It hurts. Wait a minute. And he took the bottom of his kimono and tore off some. He began to tie it around that wounded branch. Again, when Saburo, he came over. Oh, Jesus! What? That is a beautiful red pine tree. Here, would you like to use my saw? It would give you all much money, this whole tree. Saburo-san, can you not see that this tree is injured? It is like dripping blood. Oji-san, you are ridiculous. No wonder you are so poor and you cannot take care of your family. And off he went. Well, Oji-san made sure that the branch was intact and that the bandages that he had put on were set. When he thought he heard the wind blow and whispered, Oji-san, you are so kind that you will be showered. And the wind started to blow. And then the whole shower, why? pine needles, but no, they were gold coins that just showered him. Ah! And he started to pick the coins, put it in his sack. And he was so excited. Of course, he ran home to his wife. Obasa, Obasa, look, look. Oh, goodness, Obasa. I was wondering how we were going to pay the rent. Oh, we are fine now. I'm going to take some good pieces and immediately go to the market. We are going to have a feast tonight. And so she went to the market and she bought niku, just meat. Oh, so rare that they could afford that. And beautiful vegetables. And finally she went to the fruit stall and picked up a peach. Oh, it smelled so good. And there was Saburo standing looking. Ah, Obasan's basket is very full. And when he saw Obasa open up her purse, saw the gold coins. Ah, Obasa, it looks like you have come into good fortune. What is this? Well, Obasa was so excited, she just blurted out the whole story to Saburo-san. Ah, domo. Thank you. And off Saburo went into the forest. He's looking around. It's got to be that one. And he went over to this red tree. He grabbed one of the branches and broke it off. Now I'm ready for you to shower me. And the wind, Kuro-san, yes, you will be showered. And out from that wounded branch, all the sticky resin dripped on it. What? It's so sticky. And so much of it that he stuck onto the tree. And the only thing left was his head. And he started yelling, Tatsuke! Tatsuke! Help! Suddenly, came down. Well, most of the folks were in the village having dinner, except for old man Oji-san. He was picking the last bits of the sticks when he heard that frantic cry, and he quickly dropped the sticks, ran over. What is up? There he saw Saburo. Don't get there, Oji-san, please help me. Look at you, so sticky. Why, in 1,000 years, you would be amber. I will help you. So Oji-san took a branch, right, Saburo off. And the wind blew. And all this pine needles went stuck onto him. He looked like a porcupine. Oh, Saburo, head down, followed Oji-san back to the village. Oji-san went to Saburo's house, knocked on the door. Oh, Oto-san, father, what has happened? Saburo went inside. And from generations on from that day, Saburo's family never harmed another tree. And as for Oji-san, wow, he was always known as the kind-hearted pine tree man. Hey, of course, we call that tale type 408, the kind and unkind character. And always in folk tales, if not kindness is. But we can still practice it without hope of any group. Right? So, my next maybe, haha, you're caught, is Stacey James, and she will be telling us a story, the title of which I know.
Hi. Okay, it's been ages. So this is, I'm going to be retelling a story. It's called Open House on Haunted Hill by, oh, just I forgot the author. John Westwell, I think. You can follow up with me. It's a lovely story. I have not practiced it at all, but it's almost Halloween. And so we'll see if I can muck my way through. But you guys are very kind and the audience, so we'll just try to work it out. Okay. 133 Poisonwood Avenue would be a killer house. Or would be stronger if it was a killer house. There's an estate over on Drew Lane that took out a family in the 1800s. And its roof hasn't leaked since. 133 Poisonwood, though, has been empty since the 80s and really needs someone to live in it. The realtor has set up an open house and has invited everyone to come. A few folks have come on through, but nobody is really sticking around. No one wants an old house these days. 133 Poisonwood Avenue sucks in its floorboards and straightens everything to be as straight and nice as possible for everyone. A man comes in with slumping shoulders, brownie bits stuck all over his sweatshirt, but does seem to be paying a little more attention than the other couple, who's barely looking and definitely not listening to the realtor and pulling out their phones at every second they can get. The man's prowling in the upstairs bedrooms and looking idly at the wallpaper, so 133 Poisonwood tries to haunt the glue in the wallpaper and make it stick just a little bit tighter so that it looks maybe a little nicer. It's supposed to be a value add, the realtor says. But the old silk wallpaper is definitely better days. There's a small child comes running in, trying to take off all of her clothes, and screaming and running throughout the house. And the man, who now we know is Daddy, says, "Anna, where is your coat?" "Clothes are for the weak," the little kid says as she runs around the house, stomping as hard as possible. I think maybe pretending to be a T-Rex. Daddy looks exasperated, but tries to corral the kid upstairs to look at the potential house. The door was left wide open. 133 Poisonwood knows heating oil is expensive these days, so summons a spectral breeze and closes the door. "Ghosts, Daddy," says Anna. "There's no such things as ghosts, Anna, but it could be Mommy." "It's not Mommy. Come upstairs." Anna stomps upstairs, but is holding onto the rail a little too tightly. Daddy doesn't seem to notice, so the house could, some houses, show people visions of slaughterings or trauma. 133 Poisonwood shows Daddy a vision of his daughter's vertigo. And Daddy comes to her rescue, not knowing where the vision came from. They go down into the basement. Anna's really wanting a second room for a playroom. The realtor's really trying to talk about how they could use the house to the best advantage for the kids. And there's just not quite enough space. Anna obviously can't be in the top room. There's not enough room for his office and her bedroom downstairs. So 133 Poisonwood leaves their gate. Every good haunted house has a secret room. So out of nowhere, like a soft kitty cat, you hear grrr. And the adults are taking stock and trying to figure out about a door that they were very sure did not exist a second ago. Well, Anna runs into the realtor quickly yells, "We're not showing that room!" Too late, everyone's in there. There's a spinning wheel and a bunch of cobwebs. 133 Poisonwood had the last person who lived there had her secret zone where she could hide from her family. Anna goes to play with the spinning wheel. It's just like Mommy's. And as she goes to touch it, it clatters to the ground. Anna gets all tangled in it and in the process loses the locket that's around her neck. Daddy scoops up Anna, says, "We need to go." They go out of the house and they leave the door open. House closed again. I mean, heating oil is very expensive. A few hours later, Daddy comes back, looking even more slumped and dejected. "My daughter, she lost her locket," he says to the realtor. Realtor has said she hadn't seen it, but he's welcome to look around, secretly hoping maybe he'll spend some more time. They look throughout the house, and the house knows that this daddy doesn't need to believe in a haunting, but does need a win. And so with all its strength, summons a breeze to blow the locket up on the first stair down to the basement in hopes that Daddy will see it. Daddy spots it, but knows Anna needs to find it on her own, so goes and gets Anna. She comes slumping around, walks through the door, spends a ton of time in the kitchen, a room she never spent any time in when she was in here before. And finally she sees it. "Look, Daddy, Mommy put it here for us." Daddy tries to fight with her about it, but gives up. "Yes, here's your." Daddy comforts Anna and really starts looking around. This really is a lot of house for the money. "It's just one family short of a home," says the realtor. 133 Poisonwood would have been more impressed if it hadn't heard that phrase a million times that day. But more than anything, that house knew it needed a home, knew it needed a family so that it could be a home. The end. Oh, I love that.
Well, that's the point of like going over reviewing one's stories afterwards, you go, "I left out 4 paragraphs." Yeah, that's what happens. So now we're going to hear from Mitch Nelson, and he has a story, well, and a song about a girlfriend, a story about a high chair. Who knows how those combine, but I guess we'll find out. So please welcome Mitch.
The chair. Did you need to change to?
Wait, go back chair.
Yeah. And then got it lowered. I'm gonna sit down this time.
You could have left your foot there.
I know. Gotta put it back. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Oh, no. No, what happened?
You want me to record or you being recorded?
No, we got it. All right. Oh, my phone is not helping. This is why you're not supposed to. This is why you're not supposed to read.
That's right. That's right.
But I'm working on this, so I'm gonna break all the rules. I first met you long ago when I was just a child. Mama said you'd be my friend whenever I got tired. I would try to kick and scream, but you would always win. Just like that, magically, you'd work your way right in. Jan, Jan, my sweet Jan, you became my only plan. Your cozy dream is still my favorite trap. So much more than just another nap. For a few years there, I really thought that I outgrew ya. Now I see how wrong I was, I barely even knew ya. Right when I'm the busiest, you tell me that it's time. It used to be annoying, now each moment feels sublime. You are always there for me, you never let me go. No matter where I wander to, you chase me to and fro. Wyoming out to Washington, you love the peaceful drive. Lectures, good books, board meetings, and sermons help you thrive. Jan, Jan, my sweet Jan, you became my only plan. Your cozy dream is still my favorite trap. You're so much more than just another nap. Even with that doggedness, I know you have fears. You jolt awake and leave me stunned when flies dance on my ears. Alone awake, I can't help wonder if you're ever coming back, or if you're chasing someone else to throw them in your sack. Jan, Jan, my sweet Jan, you became my only plan. Your cozy dream is still my favorite trap. So much more than just another nap. I was right, you get around. I wish you were just mine. John and Sarah and my dad all think you are so fine. They claim to love you just like me. They say that you love them too. I guess I'll just get over it. The whole world sleeps with you. Jan, Jan, my sweet Jan, you became my only plan. Your cozy dream is still my favorite trap. Jan, just another nap. All right. John said that was only 3 minutes, so I have to tell a story too. This story was brought to you by a game with a friend. Uh, uh, it was one of those prompt games, and my friend said, "All right, tell me the story of that one high chair in the corner of the restaurant." It's lonely. I miss Paul. Yes, we have names. Paul was the victim of a teenage prank. Some kid came over 2 days ago and grabbed Paul. Now, I knew that the kid did not need Paul. He was big. He was a big kid. And he did not have any little sisters or anything like that. He just grabbed Paul. And he got up on top of Paul, and he got one foot in, and he got the other foot in, and then gravity took over. And the kid fell deep into that chair, Paul himself. Well, Paul was tired of this kind of tomfoolery. And so Paul grabbed that kid by the hips and kept him there tight. Couldn't figure it out. He couldn't get out. He pulled. The kid tried to pull himself out. And finally, it was maybe a half hour later, an ambulance came and a fire truck came. Paul still didn't care. He held on to that kid. And finally, Paul and the kid went off in the ambulance. It's been days now, sitting here, all alone in the corner. I don't know if I'll ever see Paul again. Sorry,
That's okay.
didn't mean to trip you.
Well, I'm quite capable of doing that on my own. And now we have Brett Anderson, who was also a baby, but now he's been roped in, and he will tell us some stories.
How do I look?
Beautiful.
Brad Pitt?
Yes.
Curls.
Well, my specialty always seems to be wise fools. So I collect these stories from all around the world. And the amazing thing is that they come from every culture, every corner of the earth. So I'll start off with one from the Middle East, from Turkey, Mullah Nasruddin. Mullah Nasruddin one day loses his mule, his donkey, and he's rushing around the village looking for a donkey, can't find him, goes to the square, goes to the forest, goes to the field, all the time saying, "Oh, thank goodness, oh, thank goodness, thank goodness." And then people say, "Mullah Nasruddin, why are you saying thank goodness? Your donkey is lost." And he's saying, "Indeed, Allah is great, because if I was with the donkey, I'd be lost too." And the next one comes from some of my favorite people, who are the wise people of Chelm, which is a city in what is today Poland, but in the old days it was all kinds of different countries. And this is one day Rabbi Moshe is seen by the villagers out in the square, and he's on his hands and knees, and he's shuffling around, and he's looking here, and he's looking there, and he's looking there, and they watch what he's doing, and they say, "Can we help? What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, I lost a 20 kopeck piece, a coin." And the villagers say, "Oh, well, that's nothing to sneeze at. We should help you find it. Where did you lose it?" And he said, "Oh, I lost it in the kitchen." And they said, "Well, if you lost it in the kitchen, why are you looking for it out here in the square?" And he said, "The light is better."
No.
So another one is about it comes from Louisiana and the Cajun culture. So if you are aware of Cajuns, Cajuns are French-speaking people who live in Louisiana, and they're called Cajuns because they used to be living up in Canada in a place called Arcadia. And when the British beat the French in one of those wars, they agreed to let the Arcadians, the French Canadians, live there. But then, like all governments, they changed their mind, and they made them all leave. They did ethnic cleansing, and they shipped them all south to Louisiana. And it was a hard thing for them. So anyway, the Acadians spoke French. They went to Louisiana, which at that time was owned by French, and they established their own culture. They tended to be poor, and they lived in the swamps, and they were fishermen also. And so, of course, their music is famous. You may have heard it's called Zydeco, and their cooking is famous for very hot soups. This story concerns two friends, Theodo and Sabado. And Theodo is walking along the river one day, and he looks up and he sees his friend Sabado on the other side. So he waves, "Yeah, Sabado, tell me, how do I get to the other side?" And Sabado says, "But Theodo, you are on the other side." So all is resolved in the end.
Yes, the wise fool. I get the fool part, but the wise maybe not, but I just want to leave up my paragraphs I left out. Return to my Quercus agrifolia, my coastal oak tree, this magnificent, surrounded in the midst of these tall apartment buildings, this wonderful tree which was home and hotel to so many. But the little bathroom, 5 by 5, that had been slapped onto one end of the cottage was directly under the oak tree. And the drain pipe was always getting clogged, and I had it cleared out several times. And this time I had a plumber in the cottage, and he said, that's not the only problem. Look, the shower tiles are black. There's some issue behind them. So I'll cut out some of the tiles and see what the issue is. So I went outside and I was watering my potted plants, and I heard this scream, this high-pitched screaming. Well, I looked up, no, Conyers, they weren't screaming. It wasn't the J. It was coming from inside the house. And I went in, and there in the shower stall, as far back as he could get, was a plumber. And there were 10-year-olds twisting and coating him all over. They erupted behind the shower tiles. The tree was exerting its power. Now, I haven't had the courage to go back and see that tree. Because when I sold my cottage, was sold in 3 days. I was aware that the man who bought it was more interested in the property than he was in the cottage. And I had had to go through this whole long thing to have another bathroom put on the other side of the cottage as far from the roots as possible. And it was quite nice, but it was small. And there was quite a bit of land around it. And he said, well, I'll just knock down a tree and I can put an apartment building. I said, oh no, that's a historically landed, that is a historical tree. There are only 11 left in the whole of San Francisco. You cannot cut it. But I later found out that it was only a $10,000 fine for cutting. And by putting up the apartments, he'd soon realize far more revenue than that. So I hope my tree is safe. But well, thank you all for coming. This is the end of our challenge. We are a little bit early, but unless anybody who was a maybe has decided that they're a yes. No, nobody on our Zooming has said yes. Thank you. We won't see you next month. Well, that will be celebration on the 28th, which is a Friday. You'll have your Thanksgiving meals still operating within. But you can call up Traditions and ask for, I think they have appetizers.
Oh, they have meals now.
Oh, they have
Proper
meals,
yeah.
proper meals if you so wish, and you can reserve a table. Doesn't start, the storytelling doesn't start till 7, but if you're thinking about getting some food, you want to get there earlier than that.
We'll have that on Zoom.
Yes.
It'll be on Zoom. So, all good stories to you.
Thank you.